You are not losing calm because life is hard, but because you keep handing control of your mind to things you never owned. You feel it in ordinary moments when plans shift, when people speak sharply, when outcomes refuse to obey your expectation and your thoughts rush faster than your reason can hold them. Stoicism begins here, in this exact recognition that your suffering is shaped more by judgment than by events. What happens outside is not yours to command. What you choose to believe, accept, and act upon is entirely yours. If you want to walk this path of self-governance and clear thinking, stay here with this channel and this work, not as entertainment but as practice with others who are learning to meet life without surrendering their mind. What follows is not comfort. It is clarity for the person ready to stop being ruled from within. Number 1. Separate what you control from everything you cannot control. Listen carefully. The first freedom is not money. It is not praise. It is not power over other people. It is the ability to tell the truth to yourself at the moment life presses hard against you. Most suffering begins there, not in the event itself, but in the judgment you attach to it. You see a message left unanswered and you call it rejection. You see a plan collapse and you call it ruin. You see another person act badly and you call it injustice against your peace. Then you let your mind run wild as if every feeling were a fact and every fear were a prophecy. That is where your calm is stolen, not by the world, by your own confused rule over the world. You do not need to control the world. You need to control your mind. That is the task. That is the line. That is the work. Everything else is noise dressed up as necessity. The weather changes, people change, bodies weaken, promises break, news arrives, plans fail, time moves on without asking permission. If you build your peace on those things, then you have built your house on water, and you should not be surprised when it sinks. The wise person does not try to command the storm. The wise person learns what belongs to them and what does not. Then they stand where reason allows and refuse to be dragged beyond that boundary. This is not weakness. This is strength. It takes more strength to accept limits than to pretend you have none. It takes more courage to say, "This is outside my power," than to waste the day raging at reality. The undisciplined mind hates this truth because it wants the whole world to bend toward comfort. It wants people to speak as it wishes, events to unfold as it planned, bodies to remain untouched by age, and chance to behave like a servant. But the world is not a servant. It is a field of conditions, some within your reach and many outside it. Your task is not to force the field to obey you. Your task is to govern your judgments, your desires, your actions, and your refusals. Start here. When something shakes you, do not ask first, "Why is this happening to me?" Ask, "What part of this is mine to command?" That question cuts through panic. It divides the useful from the useless. It separates action from complaint. It reveals the only territory where virtue can live. You cannot command another person's mood. You cannot command the speed of traffic. You cannot command the outcome of every effort. You cannot command the past to return and be kinder. You cannot command tomorrow to arrive exactly as you imagine, but you can command how you meet each of those things. You can command whether you speak with restraint or with poison. You can command whether you act with justice or with selfishness. You can command whether you surrender your mind to fear or keep it seated under reason. This is the first discipline. Distinguish what is yours from what is not. Do it before the emotions gather strength. Do it before the body tightens and the tongue runs ahead of wisdom. Do it while you still have a small window in which reason can enter. The moment you feel pulled outward by disturbance, pause. Do not obey the first impulse simply because it is loud. Impulse is not authority. It is a pulse. It rises, shakes, and passes. If you treat every impulse as a command, you become a servant to every passing weather inside you. A calm life begins when you stop mistaking reaction for action. You have likely spent years living as if peace were something handed to you by favorable circumstances. It is not. Peace is earned through judgment. This is why the strongest people are often the quietest in crisis. They are not cold, they are trained. They know that the event is one thing and the story they tell about the event is another. A lost job is one thing. The conclusion that your life is over is another. A harsh word is one thing. The belief that your dignity has been destroyed is another. A delayed answer is one thing. The thought that you are unloved is another. Between the event and the feeling is a judgment. That judgment is yours. That judgment is the hinge. Guard it. If you want to stay calm when everything around you feels out of control, then you must learn to ask better questions. What is actually happening? What am I adding to it? What is within my power right now? What would reason have me do? This is not a trick. It is a way of life. The untrained mind treats every inconvenience as a personal attack. The trained mind sees an occasion to practice virtue. There is no better test than disruption. Anyone can seem steady when life is smooth. The real measure appears when things break form. Then your habits show. Then your true beliefs step forward. Then you learn whether you have trained yourself to live or merely to enjoy comfort. Accept what cannot be changed. That does not mean you approve of harm. It means you stop wasting your soul by fighting what already is. You are not asked to love every hardship. You are asked to face it without lies. Reality does not need your agreement to exist. Refusing it only doubles the pain. The first wound comes from the event. The second comes from resistance fed by pride. A person who insists that reality should have been different is a person who makes peace impossible. He argues with what has already taken place and then wonders why his chest feels tight. He calls this frustration. In truth, it is often vanity. He wanted life to serve his image. Life refused. Now he is offended. You must become a person who can say, "This is the fact. Now what is the right action?" That is the Stoic sentence. Not, "This should not have happened." Not, "Why me?" Not, "I cannot bear this." Those are cries of a mind still attached to fantasy. The right sentence is steady and spare. This is what is here, what is required of me now. That question returns you to yourself. It ends the theater. It calls the soul back from the edge of panic and places it under command. It does not erase pain. It removes confusion. And confusion is often the thing that makes pain unbearable. You must also accept that much of what you fear has not happened. Your mind loves to draft disasters in advance. It rehearses loss. It rehearses humiliation. It rehearses failure. It rehearses rejection. It rehearses illness. It rehearses every scene in which you are left exposed. Then it mistakes rehearsal for warning. You feel the fear before the event and begin to suffer twice. This is wasted life. Stop feeding imagined futures as if they were present facts. Bring your attention back to what is in front of you. There is enough to handle in the present moment without borrowing trouble from days that have not arrived. This is why the practice of control is not merely philosophical, it is immediate. Right now, your mind may be reaching outward, trying to manage a future it cannot touch. Pull it back. Right now, your chest may be tightening around an insult that already passed. Let it go. Right now, your hands may be restless because you want certainty before action. You will not get certainty. You will get a duty. Do the duty. That is enough. The person who waits to feel fully safe before acting will remain weak forever. The person who acts from reason despite uncertainty becomes free. To train this, begin each day by naming what is yours. Your judgments are yours, your choices are yours, your intentions are yours, your refusal to lie to yourself is yours, your effort is yours, your willingness to act with justice is yours. The result is not yours. The response of others is not yours. The timing of events is not yours. The world is larger than your preference. Once you truly accept that, a great burden falls away. You no longer have to pretend that success depends entirely on you. You no longer have to carry the impossible weight of controlling every branch of consequence. You do your part and release the rest, and your part must be excellent. This is where many people misunderstand the teaching. They hear that the outcome is not in their power, and they grow careless. That is weakness disguised as wisdom. The point is not to withdraw into laziness. The point is to invest yourself fully in what is yours. You control the quality of your effort, therefore make it worthy. You control whether you speak truthfully, therefore speak truthfully. You control whether you keep your promises, therefore keep them. You control whether you act with fairness when it would be easier to be selfish, therefore choose fairness. The art is not in controlling the world. The art is in never surrendering your own character. When fear rises, do not ask fear whether it is correct. Fear is not a judge, it is an alarm. Some alarms are useful, many are false, but even when fear signals danger, it does not tell you how to live. Reason tells you how to live. Fear says, something might happen. Reason says, even if it does, remain upright. Fear says, protect yourself at any cost. Reason says, do what is just, and let the rest fall where it may. Fear says, avoid discomfort. Reason says, discomfort is not evil, vice is evil. Fear says, preserve appearance. Reason says, preserve integrity. You cannot be calm while obeying fear as if it were a master. You can be calm only when fear is examined and either dismissed or placed in its proper place. Many people are ruled by what they call urgency, but it is often just agitation. They answer every email as though their honor depends on it. They rush into decisions because silence makes them uneasy. They speak too quickly because they cannot bear not to be noticed. They react to every slight because they have made themselves fragile. A person who needs constant reassurance is not at peace. He is starving for a power he cannot have. The wise person does not ask the world to stabilize his worth. He knows what is worth having and makes himself fit for it. He does not beg to be calm. He practices calm like a craft. So when life feels out of control, return to the body and the breath as servants, not masters. Slow your speech. Soften your shoulders. Release the jaw. Plant both feet. Let the next action be deliberate. There is great power in refusing haste. Haste is the ally of error. The mind that rushes is the mind that has already lost discipline. A pause can save a day. In the space between stimulus and response lies your dignity. You do not owe the first impulse obedience. You owe your reason obedience. That means you can feel the surge without becoming it. You can notice the anger without handing it the steering wheel. You can feel shame without collapsing into shame's demands. You can feel fear without surrendering your will. You must practice this in small things before you are asked to practice it in great ones. The person who cannot remain steady when a message is delayed will not suddenly become steady in grief. The person who cannot tolerate a change in routine will not easily endure deep loss. The person who cannot bear being misunderstood in minor matters will suffer greatly when truly challenged. So train now. Let traffic irritate you and then let it go. Let a small criticism meet your attention and then leave without owning you. Let inconvenience become your tutor. Every small disturbance is an opportunity to rehearse freedom. Do not despise small trials. They are the gymnasium of the soul. You will notice that much of what disturbs you is built on expectation. You wanted a person to be different. You wanted a day to proceed cleanly. You wanted your effort to be recognized. You wanted life to confirm your plans. But desire becomes bondage when it attaches itself to what cannot be guaranteed. Discipline your desires. Want only what is in accord with virtue. Want to act justly. Want to think clearly. Want to speak honestly. Want to remain steady. Want to use what happens well. If you want those things, you will always have something secure to pursue. But if you want control over outcomes, over praise, over safety, over the behavior of others, you will remain angry with life forever. This is the quiet strength of the Stoic path. It strips away false demands. It asks less of the world and more of yourself. That sounds harsh to the lazy mind, because the lazy mind wants to offload responsibility. Yet this is the path of freedom, because it gives power back to where it belongs. No tyrant can touch the ruling part of your mind unless you hand it over. No setback can corrupt your character unless you consent to corruption. No insult can truly damage you unless you decide that your reason must bow to it. The body can be struck. The reputation can be shaken. The plan can fail. But the inner law remains yours to uphold. And what is that inner law? It is simple. Be just. Be disciplined. Be courageous. Be razumny. That is, ruled by sound judgment. Every hour asks these things in one form or another. When someone treats you unfairly, justice demands that you do not become unfair in return. When temptation calls, discipline demands that you do not sell yourself for ease. When fear urges retreat from what is right, courage demands that you stay with duty. When confusion clouds the mind, reason demands that you wait, examine, and act without self-deception. These are not high-minded ornaments, they are your real work. They are the shape of a life that cannot be thrown off balance by every passing wind. Do not mistake acceptance for passivity. Acceptance is not surrender to vice, it is surrender to fact. Once fact is accepted, action becomes clearer. If a storm has arrived, you do not waste time arguing with rain. You secure what can be secured. If a person is hostile, you do not waste time demanding that hostility vanish on command. You choose the right response. If your own mind is scattered, you do not pretend it is fine. You call it back. Stoic acceptance is not the end of action, it is the end of delusion. And the end of delusion is the beginning of useful work. Useful work begins with attention. Most people do not live where they are. Their body is in the room, but their mind is in a memory, a fantasy, a fear, or a grievance. They are divided against themselves. That division produces agitation. You must gather yourself. Ask, where is my mind right now? If it has wandered into the future, then return it. If it is gnawing on the past, then release it. If it is rehearsing a conversation that has not happened, then stop feeding it. The present moment is not small. It is the only place where virtue can act. You cannot practice calm yesterday. You cannot practice wisdom tomorrow. You can only do it now. To help yourself, set reminders throughout the day to ask one question. Is this within my control? Not once, many times. Ask it before you reply. Ask it before you complain. Ask it before you panic. Ask it before you scroll for reassurance. Ask it before you blame. Ask it before you make a promise you have not examined. This one question can save you from 100 errors. It clears the fog. It exposes useless labor. It tells you when to work and when to release. When the answer is no, do not wrestle with the impossible. Redirect your energy to the judgment or action that is yours. That is where your power lives. There is another practice you must embrace if you want your calm to become real rather than imagined. Practice voluntary discomfort, not as punishment, as training. Let yourself experience cold, hunger, inconvenience, simplicity, or delayed comfort in a measured way, not because suffering is noble in itself, but because weakness is dangerous and comfort can make you soft. A life too protected becomes brittle. When you occasionally choose less comfort than you could have, you teach yourself that happiness is not dependent on luxury. You prove to your own mind that peace does not require perfect conditions. That lesson is priceless. A person who knows he can endure little is less afraid of losing much. And while you train, do not lie to yourself about progress. The mind will resist discipline. It will bargain. It will say tomorrow. It will say after this week. It will say once conditions improve. But conditions are always changing. There will always be a reason to delay. You must learn to act without waiting for the mood to save you. The mood is unreliable. Duty is not. Rise when it is time to rise. Reflect when it is time to reflect. Hold back when holding back is right. Speak when speaking is right. Work whether or not anyone notices. This is how freedom is built, not in grand declarations but in repeated choices that make your soul harder to corrupt. When you fail, do not dramatize your failure. Examine it, learn from it, then return to work. There is no virtue in self-hatred. There is only usefulness in self-knowledge. The purpose of examination is not shame, it is correction. At the end of the day, ask yourself plainly, where did I obey impulse instead of reason? Where did I complain instead of acting? Where did I give my peace away? Where did I want praise more than truth? Where did I abandon the discipline I promised myself? Then do not excuse what you see. Also do not dwell in it like a wounded animal. See it, own it, correct it. That is enough. The next morning is another chance to govern yourself better. You should also examine what you call important. Much of what people defend with intensity is not important at all. They defend being right when they should defend being fair. They defend being admired when they should defend being honest. They defend convenience when they should defend character. They defend their image when they should defend their reason. Look at your own life and ask what you are actually protecting. If it is your comfort, then you are not yet free. If it is your reputation, then you are still dependent. If it is your ability to dominate outcomes, then you have made yourself a slave to the impossible. But if it is your moral purpose, then you have begun to stand on firm ground. The world will continue to present what you cannot control. A door closes, a body aches, a friend disappoints you, a plan falls apart, a loss arrives. Time removes what you once thought permanent. None of this is an argument against calm. It is the reason calm must be learned. The person who understands control does not become numb. He becomes stable. He can feel grief without being destroyed by it. He can feel anger without acting foolishly. He can feel uncertainty without collapsing into panic. He can stand in the middle of change and remain answerable to reason. That is not emptiness. That is mastery. And mastery begins with a decision. You must decide that your inner life matters more than the chaos around you, not in a selfish way, but in a lawful way. If your inner life is corrupt, then whatever you accomplish will be poisoned. If your inner life is orderly, then even hardship can be used well. The world may push, circumstances may strain, other people may remain unreasonable, yet none of that needs to make you unreasonable. This is the test, not whether life is gentle, whether you remain governed. So when you wake tomorrow and the first wave of worry appears, do not feed it. Ask what is in your power. When a person behaves badly, do not make their behavior the center of your mind. Ask what virtue requires of you. When a loss arrives, do not build a palace of complaint around it. Ask what can still be done well. When your own impulses grow loud, do not obey them. Observe them and choose with care. When you feel the pressure to control everything, remember that control is not the mark of wisdom. Self-control is. The first is impossible. The second is your duty. There is a grave dignity in this way of living. It does not depend on applause. It does not need spectacle. It is seen in the person who remains honest when dishonesty would be easier. It is seen in the person who remains composed when others are unraveling. It is seen in the person who does not throw away his character just to soften a hard day. That person has begun to understand freedom. He no longer begs the universe to become manageable. He makes himself manageable to reason. That is the hidden victory. That is the only victory that cannot be taken from you. You have wasted enough time blaming circumstances for what discipline could have healed. That is a hard sentence, but hard truths are medicine. Your peace is not waiting in a better season. It is waiting in a better use of this season. The hour you are living now is the only hour that can be shaped. The decision you make now is the only decision that can become action. So stop rehearsing the life you wish had happened. Stop arguing with what already is. Stop handing your calm to forces that were never yours to command. Pick up what is yours. Judgment, choice, effort, character. Use them well. Do that today. Do it again tonight when you review your conduct. Do it again tomorrow before the world gets its hands on your attention. Every time you return to this discipline, you become harder to shake and easier to trust. You become less theatrical and more real, less reactive and more just, less desperate and more free. And when the world again seems out of control, you will know the answer, not because the world has changed, but because you have learned where your power lives. Do not waste another day pretending peace will arrive from outside. It will not. The world will remain what it is. People will remain fallible. Events will remain uncertain. But your mind can become clear. Your judgments can become clean. Your actions can become steady. Your character can become firm. That is enough. That is everything. Hold to what is yours. Release what is not. And walk forward without complaint. Number 2. Accept every event without demanding reality obey your wishes. Accept this truth before you ask life for anything else. Reality has never promised to arrange itself around your preferences. The seasons do not pause because you are tired. Time does not slow because you are afraid. Other people do not suddenly become wise because you wish they would. The world follows its own order, whether you approve of it or not. The moment you demand that reality behave according to your expectations, you begin a battle that cannot be won. You do not lose because reality is cruel. You lose because you chose to fight something that was never waiting for your permission. Many people believe they are disturbed by difficult events. Look more carefully. They are disturbed because they expected a different event. They imagined a conversation that would go well. They expected loyalty that another person never possessed. They believed every careful plan would succeed simply because they worked hard. When life refused to match those expectations, they called reality unfair. What they truly experienced was the pain of attachment to an imagined world. There is a great difference between meeting life as it is and insisting that life become what you desire. One path leads toward reason, the other leads toward endless disappointment. Every day presents countless opportunities to practice this distinction. A delayed train, a cancelled meeting, a mistake at work, an unexpected expense, a harsh opinion from someone whose judgment you cannot govern. None of these events asks for your permission before arriving. They simply appear. Your freedom begins after they arrive, not before. Notice how quickly the mind says, "This should not be happening." Listen carefully to those words. They often reveal that your struggle is no longer with the event itself, but with your refusal to accept its existence. The event has already entered reality. Your resistance cannot erase it. It can only multiply your distress. You suffer once because something difficult occurred. Then you suffer again because your imagination refuses to release the picture of how things were supposed to unfold. This second suffering is often greater than the first. A person can recover from failure, Many never recover from the belief that failure should never have happened. They spend years carrying resentment against moments that no longer exist. Their body lives in the present while their thoughts remain trapped inside an argument with yesterday. Nothing useful grows there. The past cannot hear your complaints. It cannot return your lost opportunities. It cannot apologize for disappointing you. It simply remains unchanged while your peace slowly disappears. The disciplined mind refuses to waste itself in arguments with completed events. It asks a different question. It asks, now that this has happened, what response is worthy of my character? That question changes everything. It turns attention away from fantasy and toward responsibility. It does not ask whether reality is pleasant. It asks whether you will remain faithful to reason despite discomfort. Acceptance is often misunderstood. Many imagine it means giving up. They believe it demands weakness or surrender. Nothing could be further from the Stoic path. Acceptance is not approval. Acceptance is accurate vision. It is the willingness to see what stands before you without adding denial or exaggeration. Once your vision becomes honest, your actions become useful. Before that moment, every decision is distorted by wishful thinking. Imagine someone receives criticism at work. One person spends the evening replaying every word, imagining revenge, searching for sympathy, and convincing himself that life has become unbearable. Another quietly accepts that criticism has occurred. He examines whether any part of it is true. He corrects what deserves correction. He ignores what is false without hatred. He sleeps peacefully because he refused to chain his inner life to another person's opinion. The difference was not the event. The difference was the judgment each person chose. Your greatest obstacle is rarely reality itself. It is your habit of negotiating with facts after they have already become facts. You continue asking life to rewrite what has already been written. Every moment spent demanding different circumstances is a moment stolen from meaningful action. The disciplined person understands that every minute belongs either to complaint or improvement. It cannot belong to both. Train yourself to recognize the first movement of resistance. It often arrives silently, a small tightening of the body, a quiet feeling that things should be easier, a growing desire to blame someone else for your discomfort. Pause there. Before your emotions gather momentum, ask yourself one simple question. What exactly am I refusing to accept? You may discover that your greatest struggle is not with reality but with your own expectations. Expectations deserve careful examination because many of them were never chosen consciously. They were inherited from habit, comfort, pride, or comparison. Somewhere you decided that success should arrive quickly. Somewhere you decided that people should always understand your intentions. Somewhere you decided that your plans deserved protection from uncertainty. Reality never signed those agreements. You created them without asking whether they were reasonable. A disciplined life requires replacing unconscious expectation with conscious acceptance. This does not make you passive. It makes you available for wise action. When you stop demanding guarantees, you become capable of courage. When you stop demanding comfort, you become capable of endurance. When you stop demanding certainty, you become capable of thoughtful decision, even in unclear conditions. Begin each morning by reminding yourself that today will contain interruption, disagreement, inconvenience, delay, misunderstanding, and uncertainty. Do not say this with bitterness. Say it calmly. You are not predicting disaster. You are preparing your judgment. If these things arrive, you will recognize them as ordinary parts of human life, rather than personal attacks against your happiness. This simple morning discipline changes the quality of your entire day. When difficulty appears, you no longer react with surprise. You recognize it as part of the training you already accepted before the day began. Instead of saying, "Why is this happening?" your mind quietly says, "Here is another opportunity to practice reason." During the day, examine every strong reaction before accepting it as truth. Your first emotional movement is not always your wisest guide. Anger often speaks before understanding has arrived. Fear often reaches conclusions before evidence appears. Pride often refuses correction because it mistakes humility for weakness. Do not hand authority to the first voice that speaks inside you. Let reason examine every judgment before it becomes belief. Ask yourself whether the event truly deserves the meaning you immediately assigned to it. Did that person's silence actually prove rejection, or have you rushed toward interpretation? Did today's setback truly destroy your future, or has your imagination simply expanded one difficulty into permanent defeat? Did another person's behavior truly diminish your character, or have you surrendered your peace by making their conduct more important than your own? These questions require patience. The undisciplined mind dislikes patience because it wants immediate certainty. It would rather invent explanations than tolerate temporary uncertainty. The disciplined mind remains willing to wait until reason has enough evidence to judge fairly. This patience protects you from countless unnecessary sorrows. Throughout the day, separate the event from your opinion about the event. Keep these two things distinct. Rain is rain, delay is delay, criticism is criticism, illness is illness, loss is loss. Your interpretation comes afterward. Many people combine these two so quickly that they cannot distinguish reality from imagination. Their emotions become servants of stories they created themselves. You possess the ability to interrupt this process. Every interruption strengthens your freedom. Every examined judgment weakens the habit of emotional slavery. Slowly your mind becomes quieter, not because life became easier, but because you stopped multiplying every hardship through careless interpretation. There is another discipline that deserves equal attention. At the end of every evening, review your day without excuse or self-condemnation. Ask where you demanded reality obey your wishes. Ask where you resisted facts that were already beyond alteration. Ask where disappointment became greater because expectation refused to yield. Observe these moments carefully. They reveal the habits that still govern your inner life. Do not perform this examination to punish yourself. Perform it to educate yourself. Honest observation is one of the greatest forms of self-respect. A person unwilling to examine himself remains imprisoned by patterns he refuses to acknowledge. A person willing to look directly at his own judgments begins the slow work of genuine freedom. You will notice over time that many conflicts disappear before they fully develop. Situations that once produced hours of frustration now pass through your mind within minutes. You become slower to accuse, slower to complain, slower to imagine disaster, faster to observe, faster to understand, faster to return your attention to the only place where virtue can actually be practiced, your own conduct. People around you may continue behaving carelessly. Circumstances may continue changing without warning. Fortune may continue refusing to explain itself. None of these things prevents you from living wisely. They merely provide occasions to strengthen the discipline you claim to value. Remember that every difficult event carries an unspoken invitation. It asks whether you will become the servant of your preferences or the guardian of your character. One path produces endless dependence upon favorable conditions. The other produces stability that survives changing conditions. The event cannot choose your answer. Only you can. There will be days when acceptance feels difficult. On those days, do not search for easier philosophy. Return to simpler practice. Observe the facts. Remove unnecessary judgments. Ask what action remains possible. Perform that action with care. Repeat this process as often as necessary. Wisdom grows through repetition more than inspiration. Eventually, you will notice something remarkable. The world has not become more obedient. Other people have not become more predictable. Fortune has not become more generous, yet your mind has become steadier. The storms outside continue, but they no longer command storms within. You have stopped asking reality to carry the burden that belongs to your own judgment. That is the beginning of genuine freedom. Not the freedom to shape every event according to desire, but the freedom to remain governed by reason regardless of the event. A person who accepts reality without demanding that it obey personal wishes cannot easily be shaken, because peace no longer depends upon favorable circumstances. Peace now depends upon disciplined judgment, honest self-examination, and the unwavering decision to live according to reason rather than preference. Carry this practice into tomorrow. When the unexpected arrives, do not ask reality to become different. Ask yourself to become wiser. When disappointment appears, do not measure life against your wishes. Measure your response against your principles. Every event becomes an opportunity to strengthen the one thing that truly deserves your lifelong attention: the character with which you meet whatever reality places before you. Number 3. Guard your judgments before emotions take command of you. Your emotions do not arrive as rulers. They become rulers only after your judgment quietly gives them permission. This is where most people lose command of themselves without ever noticing the moment it happens. They believe anger appeared because someone insulted them. They believe fear appeared because uncertainty entered their lives. They believe despair appeared because circumstances became difficult. Yet the deepest Stoic truth asks you to look more carefully. Between every event and every emotional storm stands a judgment. If that judgment remains unexamined, your emotions will soon occupy the place that belongs to reason. Your greatest responsibility is not to eliminate emotion. It is to prevent emotion from becoming your highest authority. A feeling may announce itself with great force, but force alone does not make it truthful. The mind that accepts every emotional impulse without examination slowly surrenders its freedom. Such a person does not choose how to live. He merely follows whichever emotion speaks the loudest in the moment. Observe your own life honestly. How many words have you spoken because irritation demanded immediate expression? How many opportunities have you abandoned because fear declared failure before any effort was made? How many relationships have weakened because pride refused to examine itself? Each of these moments began long before the visible action. They began with an unquestioned judgment that quietly entered the mind and was treated as fact instead of possibility. The disciplined life begins by slowing this process. You must become aware of the instant when the mind first assigns meaning to an event. This moment is often brief. It passes so quickly that an untrained person hardly notices it. Yet this hidden instant determines whether reason remains in command or emotion takes the throne. Once you learn to recognize it, you discover that much of your suffering has never been inevitable. It has been the result of judgments accepted too quickly. Imagine hearing criticism from another person. Before anger rises, the mind often whispers something unnoticed. It says, "I have been disrespected." That statement feels obvious, but it has not yet been examined. Perhaps the criticism was unfair. Perhaps it contained useful truth. Perhaps it came from ignorance. Perhaps it came from concern. Your immediate judgment decides which emotional path you enter. If the judgment is careless, your emotions faithfully follow it into confusion. The same pattern appears in countless ordinary moments. Someone fails to return your call. Your judgment quickly declares neglect. A plan changes unexpectedly. Your judgment immediately announces disaster. A mistake becomes visible. Your judgment labels you incapable. None of these conclusions arrived from reality itself. They were created within your own reasoning before your emotions accepted them as instructions. The Stoic discipline requires you to become suspicious of your first conclusions, not because every first judgment is false, but because every judgment deserves examination before receiving your trust. A wise person never allows immediate appearance to become permanent belief without careful inspection. The first impression belongs to circumstance. The final judgment belongs to your character. This practice demands patience that most people never develop. Modern life encourages speed in every direction. Decisions become faster. Reactions become quicker. Opinions become immediate. Yet the faster the judgment, the greater the chance that reason never entered the process. A disciplined mind understands that truth is not strengthened by haste. It is strengthened by careful examination. Each morning, prepare yourself for this work before the world competes for your attention. Sit quietly for a few moments and remind yourself that today your greatest challenge will not come from other people. It will come from your own interpretations. Resolve before the day begins that no strong emotion will receive immediate obedience. Promise yourself that every reaction must first appear before the court of reason. This simple commitment transforms ordinary experiences into opportunities for philosophical training. Instead of treating each inconvenience as an interruption, you begin treating it as practice. Every disagreement becomes an invitation to examine judgment. Every disappointment becomes an invitation to inspect expectation. Every temptation becomes an invitation to test whether desire agrees with virtue or merely seeks comfort. Do not fear this examination. Fear belongs to the person who never questions himself. The individual unwilling to investigate his own thinking becomes vulnerable to every passing emotion. His peace depends entirely upon circumstances remaining pleasant because he possesses no disciplined method for governing his inner responses. Ask yourself throughout the day, what judgment has my mind already made? This question reaches beneath visible emotion toward its hidden foundation. Anger rarely begins with raised voices. It begins with a private conclusion that someone has violated what you believe you deserve. Anxiety rarely begins with trembling hands. It begins with an assumption that future events must unfold according to personal preference. Jealousy rarely begins with another person's success. It begins with the judgment that another person's fortune somehow diminishes your own worth. By identifying these hidden conclusions, you interrupt the automatic movement from impression to emotional surrender. This interruption is one of the highest forms of self-governance. It creates space for reason to perform its proper task. Instead of obeying the first mental story, you begin asking whether that story deserves belief. Many people avoid this work because they confuse self-examination with self-criticism. These are not the same. Self-criticism often seeks reasons for shame. Self-examination seeks opportunities for correction. The first weakens character through discouragement. The second strengthens character through honesty. The Stoic path never asks you to despise yourself. It asks you to observe yourself without deception. When a powerful emotion appears, resist the urge to identify yourself completely with it. Instead of saying, "I am angry," quietly recognize, anger is present. Instead of saying, "I am afraid," observe, fear has appeared. This small distinction protects the ruling part of your mind. It reminds you that emotions are experiences occurring within you, not masters entitled to command you. Once this separation becomes familiar, ask another question. What judgment invited this emotion? Search patiently. The answer often reveals beliefs you have carried for years without examination. You may discover that much of your anger depends upon believing that everyone should appreciate your efforts. You may find that much of your anxiety depends upon believing uncertainty is unacceptable. You may realize your disappointment grows from expecting life to reward every honest intention immediately. These discoveries are valuable because they expose assumptions that have quietly directed your life. A hidden belief cannot be corrected until it becomes visible. Every evening offers another opportunity to uncover these invisible rulers. Review the strongest emotional moments of your day, not to relive them, but to understand them. Ask yourself which judgment gave each emotion its strength. Ask whether that judgment reflected reason or merely habit. You will soon notice recurring patterns. Perhaps criticism always unsettles you because your identity depends too heavily upon approval. Perhaps delay consistently irritates you because impatience has become an accepted companion. Perhaps uncertainty repeatedly weakens your resolve because you have mistaken control for security. These patterns reveal where further discipline is required. Never expect perfection from this practice. Expect progress through repetition. The undisciplined mind was not formed in one day, and it will not become orderly through a single insight. Every careful judgment strengthens reason. Every examined impression weakens emotional impulsiveness. The transformation is gradual because genuine character grows through repeated choices rather than dramatic moments. There will be occasions when emotion overwhelms you despite your best efforts. Do not use these moments as excuses to abandon the discipline. Instead, let them become teachers. After calm returns, revisit the experience with honesty. Identify the exact judgment that escaped examination. Consider how reason might have interpreted the situation differently. This reflection prepares you for future encounters with similar challenges. A person devoted to Stoic practice does not seek a life without emotion. Such a goal misunderstands human nature. Instead, seek a life where emotion follows reason rather than replacing it. Joy becomes steadier because it no longer depends upon unstable circumstances. Concern becomes wiser because it serves thoughtful action instead of panic. Even grief becomes more dignified because it remains guided by truth rather than despair. Remember that your relationships are deeply shaped by the judgments you carry into them. Many conflicts begin not with another person's actions, but with assumptions you never questioned. You presume intention where none existed. You assign motives without evidence. You interpret silence as hostility. You mistake disagreement for disrespect. Then your emotions respond to conclusions that reality never confirmed. Train yourself to delay interpretation. Let facts remain facts until reason has examined them carefully. This restraint prevents countless misunderstandings. It also protects your character from unnecessary resentment. A person committed to truth refuses to manufacture certainty where evidence remains incomplete. Your speech also deserves careful discipline. Emotional judgments often escape through careless words before reason has finished its work. Once spoken, words cannot be recalled. They influence relationships, shape reputations, and reveal the condition of your inner life. Before speaking during emotional moments, ask whether your words serve justice, wisdom, and self-command. If they do not, silence often demonstrates greater strength than argument. Throughout the day, remind yourself that another person's behavior belongs to their character, while your response belongs to yours. Their impatience cannot force your impatience. Their anger cannot compel your anger. Their dishonesty cannot require your dishonesty. Each moment offers a fresh opportunity to preserve the integrity of your own judgment, regardless of external influence. This discipline gradually changes the atmosphere of your entire life. Situations that once produced immediate emotional turbulence begin losing their power, not because circumstances improved, but because your judgments became more careful. The mind no longer rushes toward exaggerated conclusions. It learns to observe before deciding. It learns to understand before reacting. It learns to consult reason before granting authority to emotion. You may discover something surprising through this process. Many situations that once appeared deeply personal were never truly about you at all. Another person's harshness may have reflected their own confusion. Another person's impatience may have arisen from unseen burdens. Another person's criticism may have contained valuable correction hidden beneath imperfect delivery. Careful judgment allows these possibilities to remain visible instead of allowing wounded pride to narrow your vision. As evening arrives, return once more to honest reflection. Ask where reason remained steady and where emotion gained command too quickly. Celebrate no victory with pride and meet no failure with discouragement. Simply continue refining the quality of your judgments. Character is shaped through this quiet persistence more than through occasional success. Eventually, you begin living from a different center. Your peace no longer depends upon favorable opinions, predictable outcomes, or constant comfort. It rests upon confidence that whatever impressions enter your mind, reason retains the final authority. This confidence cannot be purchased, borrowed, or inherited. It must be earned through daily discipline. The world will continue presenting unexpected events, difficult people, uncertain outcomes, and changing circumstances. None of these can be prevented entirely. Yet each day grants you another opportunity to strengthen the faculty that determines whether those events become sources of wisdom or sources of unnecessary suffering. Guard your judgments with unwavering care, because they quietly shape every emotion that follows. When reason remains vigilant, emotions become faithful servants rather than reckless rulers. In that order lies genuine freedom. In that discipline lies lasting tranquility. In that steady commitment to examining your own mind before believing its first conclusions, you begin living not according to impulse, but according to the highest purpose of a rational human being. Number 4. Anchor your attention completely within the present moment, today. Look honestly at where your mind spends most of its life. Your body moves through this day, yet your attention rarely remains with it. You revisit conversations that have already ended. You rehearse events that have not yet arrived. You argue with memories that cannot answer you. You negotiate with futures that do not yet exist. Then you wonder why peace feels distant. Your life is not being taken from you only by great hardships. It is being quietly consumed by a mind that refuses to stay where your life is actually unfolding. The present moment is the only place where reason can direct your character. You cannot act wisely in yesterday because yesterday has already passed beyond your reach. You cannot practice virtue inside tomorrow because tomorrow has not yet placed any duty before you. Every meaningful choice exists only within the moment you are now living. Yet many people abandon this moment without realizing they have done so. They allow imagination to become stronger than observation, and in doing so they surrender the only place where genuine freedom can be exercised. The Stoic path begins by restoring your attention to what stands directly before you. This is not because the past has no value or the future deserves no consideration. Both have their proper place. The past is useful for learning. The future is useful for preparation. Neither should become a permanent residence for the mind. Wisdom requires that memory serve understanding rather than regret, and that planning serve duty rather than anxiety. Notice how often your thoughts leave the present without invitation. A small inconvenience appears, and immediately your mind races toward every difficulty that might follow. One mistake occurs, and suddenly you imagine years of failure waiting ahead. A painful memory returns, and before long your emotions begin responding as though the past has become today's reality once again. None of this movement improves your judgment. It only divides your attention until your reason becomes weak through constant distraction. The undisciplined mind mistakes endless thinking for useful thinking. It believes that repeated mental activity must somehow produce certainty or control. Instead, it often produces confusion. A person who endlessly revisits what cannot be changed slowly loses the ability to perform what still can be done. Another who constantly predicts possible disasters neglects the responsibilities already resting in front of him. Both have abandoned reality in favor of imagination, and both pay for this habit with unnecessary unrest. You must begin treating your attention as one of your greatest responsibilities. Wherever attention settles, character soon follows. If your attention remains fixed upon imagined insults, resentment grows. If your attention remains fixed upon future fears, courage weakens. If your attention remains fixed upon the faults of others, self-examination disappears. But when attention returns steadily to the present duty before you, reason finds solid ground upon which to stand. Each morning, before entering the demands of the day, pause long enough to establish the direction of your mind. Do not immediately allow messages, opinions, or distractions to determine your first thoughts. Instead, quietly remind yourself that today is not asking you to solve your entire future. It asks only that you meet each moment with integrity, sound judgment, and disciplined action. That is enough. More than that has never been required. As the day unfolds, many invitations will attempt to pull your attention away from where it belongs. Some will come through worry, others through desire, some through irritation, others through comparison. None of these forces can command your attention without your consent. The mind may produce many impressions, but you remain responsible for deciding which impressions deserve continued attention. When you notice your thoughts drifting far beyond the present, do not become frustrated with yourself. Simply recognize what has happened. Then gently return your attention to the task now before you. This simple movement may appear ordinary, yet repeated thousands of times, it transforms the quality of an entire life. Self-governance grows through countless quiet corrections rather than dramatic moments of inspiration. Many people lose themselves because they insist on carrying burdens that belong to another hour. They demand certainty about outcomes still hidden by time. They seek emotional resolution for problems that have not yet fully revealed themselves. Such efforts appear responsible on the surface, yet they often conceal an inability to remain faithfully present. The disciplined person understands that tomorrow's responsibilities should be met tomorrow, while today's responsibilities deserve today's complete attention. Consider how often fear gains strength by extending itself beyond the present. A difficult conversation scheduled for next week begins occupying today's peace. A possible financial challenge months away overshadows today's opportunities. An uncertain medical result not yet received dominates every thought. In each case, the present moment becomes neglected because imagination has claimed authority over reality, yet no useful action can be taken inside imagined futures beyond careful preparation. Everything else merely exhausts the mind. The Stoic discipline asks you to reduce life to its immediate obligation. Ask yourself throughout the day, what does reason require from me right now? Not later, not next month, not after circumstances become perfect. Right now. Sometimes the answer will be to listen carefully. Sometimes it will be to work diligently. Sometimes it will be to remain silent. Sometimes it will be to speak honestly. Whatever duty appears, give it your complete attention instead of allowing your thoughts to wander toward distant concerns. You will discover that many tasks become lighter once attention is fully given to them. The mind often creates unnecessary resistance because it divides itself between present effort and future speculation. Half your attention remains with the work while the other half worries about results. This division weakens both performance and peace. A unified mind works with greater clarity because it is no longer struggling against imagined burdens. Your relationships also depend upon this discipline. How often have you listened while secretly preparing your next response? How often have you looked at another person while your thoughts remained elsewhere? Presence is one of the highest forms of respect because it demonstrates that reason has chosen reality over distraction. A mind scattered across countless concerns cannot fully practice justice toward those standing directly before it. The same principle applies when facing difficulty. Pain often becomes heavier because the mind refuses to carry only today's portion. It immediately gathers yesterday's disappointments and tomorrow's fears until one challenge becomes an overwhelming burden. The disciplined mind refuses this habit. It deals faithfully with the reality presently at hand without multiplying it through unnecessary additions. Throughout the day, create brief moments of deliberate stillness. Before beginning a new task, pause for a few breaths and ask where your attention currently rests. If it has wandered into memory, bring it back. If it has rushed ahead toward uncertainty, bring it back. If it has become trapped inside comparison with others, bring it back. This repeated return strengthens the governing faculty of the mind more effectively than endless intellectual discussion. You must also become careful about the stories you continually replay. Many people repeatedly relive moments of embarrassment, betrayal, or failure as though constant remembrance somehow protects them from future pain. In truth, they repeatedly reopen wounds that reality has already closed. Reflection is useful only when it leads toward greater wisdom. Repetition without learning becomes another form of self-inflicted suffering. Likewise, endless anticipation rarely produces better preparation. There is a difference between thoughtful planning and anxious prediction. Planning asks what reasonable action should be taken today. Anxiety demands certainty about events that remain unknowable. One strengthens discipline, the other weakens it. Learn to distinguish between these two movements of the mind with complete honesty. As evening approaches, examine not merely what you accomplished, but where your attention lived throughout the day. Ask yourself whether your thoughts remained faithful to present responsibilities or continually escaped into regret, fear, fantasy, or distraction. Observe these patterns without excuse. Your attention reveals your true priorities more clearly than your intentions ever will. Do not become discouraged if you discover how often your mind wanders. Such discovery marks the beginning of wisdom rather than failure. A person cannot correct what remains unseen. Every honest observation provides another opportunity to strengthen discipline tomorrow. Character develops through persistent awareness applied consistently over time. Another important practice is learning to complete one action before mentally abandoning it for another. Much inner unrest arises because the mind refuses to remain fully engaged with any single responsibility. While working, it thinks about resting. While resting, it worries about unfinished work. While speaking, it imagines future conversations. While eating, it rushes toward tomorrow's schedule. Such divided attention prevents satisfaction because the mind never fully inhabits any experience entrusted to it. Reason asks something different. It asks you to give yourself completely to the duty currently before you. When working, work honestly. When listening, listen carefully. When serving another person, serve wholeheartedly. When reflecting, reflect sincerely. This simplicity restores order because each moment receives the attention appropriate to it instead of competing with imagined alternatives. You may notice that your desire for constant distraction often hides an unwillingness to meet yourself honestly. Silence can feel uncomfortable because it removes the noise behind which many people conceal unresolved judgments. Yet, the Stoic path never encourages escape from self-examination. It invites you to remain quietly present long enough for your own thinking to become visible. Only then can reason begin its work of correction. Do not measure the value of a day by how many events filled it. Measure it by the quality of attention you brought to each responsibility entrusted to you. A quiet day lived with discipline carries greater worth than a crowded day consumed by mental confusion. The excellence of life depends less upon constant activity than upon the wisdom governing that activity. There will always be reasons tempting you away from the present. New concerns will appear, old memories will return, uncertainty will continue accompanying human life. You cannot prevent these impressions from arriving. You can decide whether they receive your prolonged attention. This decision quietly shapes your character day after day. Over time, you will notice a remarkable change. Ordinary moments, once overlooked, begin revealing opportunities for virtue. Waiting becomes practice in patience. Conversation becomes practice in justice. Work becomes practice in diligence. Difficulty becomes practice in endurance. None of these opportunities required extraordinary circumstances. They required only a mind fully awake to the present moment, where virtue is always available. Your peace does not depend upon possessing every answer about the future. It depends upon meeting the present with unwavering fidelity to reason. The future will become the present soon enough, bringing with it new duties and fresh occasions for disciplined action. When that hour arrives, meet it as faithfully as you meet this one. Until then, remain where your life truly exists. Let memory teach without imprisoning you. Let preparation guide without overwhelming you. Return again and again to the duty standing before your eyes. Anchor your attention where your character can actually be formed. Every moment honestly lived according to reason strengthens the ruling part of your soul. In that quiet discipline, you discover a freedom that no changing circumstance can take away, because your mind has finally learned to dwell where life is genuinely being lived, in the present moment entrusted to you today. Number 5. Examine every fearful thought through calm reason before believing. Fear often enters your mind wearing the appearance of certainty. It does not introduce itself as a possibility. It presents itself as an unquestionable conclusion. It tells you that failure is inevitable, that loss cannot be endured, that rejection defines your worth, or that tomorrow already contains your defeat. If you immediately believe these messages, you surrender your judgment before reason has even been allowed to speak. The Stoic life begins when you refuse to grant fear the authority it constantly demands. Many people imagine fear as something forced upon them from the outside. They blame circumstances, other people, or uncertain events for the unrest they carry within. Yet look more honestly. Fear becomes powerful not because it appears, but because it is welcomed without examination. An impression enters the mind. Instead of questioning it, you build your decisions around it. Instead of testing it, you obey it. Before long, an unverified thought has become the hidden ruler of your entire day. This is the danger of an undisciplined mind. It mistakes emotional urgency for truth. A fearful thought arrives with intensity, and intensity is confused with accuracy, but reason does not measure truth by emotional force. A loud voice is not necessarily a wise voice. A frightening possibility is not necessarily reality. If you allow every anxious prediction to direct your actions, your life gradually becomes shaped by imagination instead of wisdom. You must learn to greet fear differently. Do not rush to silence it, and do not rush to obey it. Meet it with calm attention. Let it stand before your judgment as every other impression must. The first task is not to eliminate fear, but to understand what it is attempting to persuade you to believe. Every fear contains a hidden claim. Until you uncover that claim, you remain vulnerable to it. Suppose your mind says that you will certainly fail if you attempt something difficult. Do not argue emotionally. Ask a simple question. What evidence supports this conclusion? You may discover that fear has confused uncertainty with certainty. It has taken something unknown and declared it already decided. Such reasoning deserves correction, not obedience. Another fear whispers that if someone disapproves of you, your value has somehow diminished. Examine this carefully. Has another person's opinion altered your ability to act with justice, honesty, discipline, or courage? Has it changed the condition of your character? Or has fear merely convinced you that approval is necessary for inner stability? Calm reasoning exposes these hidden assumptions before they quietly govern your choices. Fear also enjoys speaking through exaggerated consequences. A single mistake becomes permanent failure. One disappointment becomes a ruined future. One uncomfortable conversation becomes the collapse of an entire relationship. This habit of enlargement weakens judgment because it replaces careful observation with emotional prediction. The Stoic discipline refuses such exaggeration. It insists upon seeing events according to their actual size rather than according to the imagination's desire to magnify them. Throughout your life, notice how many fears never became reality. Count the hours spent worrying about conversations that unfolded peacefully. Remember the nights lost to anxiety over events that never occurred. Reflect upon the countless imagined disasters that disappeared without leaving a trace. These memories should teach humility. They reveal that the mind often proves far less reliable than reason when left without discipline. This does not mean every fear lacks value. Some fears point toward genuine dangers requiring thoughtful action. The Stoic path does not demand blindness. It demands discernment. The difference lies in whether fear becomes an advisor or a ruler. A wise person listens carefully, examines thoroughly, and then decides according to reason. An untrained person reacts immediately and calls that reaction wisdom. Begin each morning by preparing your judgment before fear has an opportunity to shape it. Sit quietly and remind yourself that difficult impressions will certainly arrive today. Some will invite worry, others will encourage hesitation, a few will tempt you toward avoidance. Resolve before the day begins that none of these impressions will become belief until reason has examined them with patience and honesty. This simple preparation changes the quality of your inner life. Fear still appears because it belongs to ordinary human experience. The difference is that it no longer receives immediate authority. Instead of becoming its servant, you become its examiner. That single change marks the beginning of genuine freedom. During the day, whenever fear begins gathering strength, resist the desire to answer it with more fearful thinking. Many people unintentionally feed anxiety by constructing additional possibilities. One uncertain event becomes 10 imagined disasters. One unanswered question becomes endless speculation. This multiplication creates emotional exhaustion while producing no practical wisdom. Refuse to participate in that habit. Ask yourself what exactly fear is asking you to believe. Make the hidden statement visible. Perhaps it says you cannot endure embarrassment. Perhaps it insists that uncertainty is unbearable. Perhaps it claims that comfort must always be preserved. Once the statement stands clearly before you, compare it with reason rather than emotion. Reason asks different questions. Is this conclusion supported by facts? Does this belief encourage virtue or merely protect comfort? Does this thought strengthen my ability to act well, or does it weaken my character through avoidance? Such questions gradually restore the governing power of the rational mind. You will often discover that fear quietly encourages dependence upon things outside your moral purpose. It persuades you that happiness depends upon success, reputation, security, or constant approval. These attachments become fertile ground where anxiety grows without limit. Whenever peace depends entirely upon external conditions, fear naturally becomes your constant companion because external conditions remain uncertain by nature. The disciplined mind chooses another foundation. It places confidence not in favorable outcomes, but in the ability to respond honorably regardless of outcomes. This does not remove uncertainty from life. It removes uncertainty from your commitment to virtue. Once your confidence rests upon your own conduct, rather than changing circumstances, fear loses much of its influence. Another valuable practice is learning to distinguish possibility from probability. Fear often presents unlikely events as though they deserve complete certainty. Calm judgment refuses this confusion. It acknowledges that many things could happen while recognizing that imagination often treats every possibility as immediate reality. Such distorted thinking burdens the mind with responsibilities it was never meant to carry. Observe how fear influences your relationships. Perhaps it prevents honest conversation because rejection seems unbearable. Perhaps it encourages constant people-pleasing because conflict appears dangerous. Perhaps it causes suspicion where trust deserves an opportunity. In each case, fear quietly reshapes your behavior before reason has considered whether its conclusions deserve belief. You cannot build just relationships while allowing fearful assumptions to guide every interaction. Justice requires clear perception. It asks you to meet others according to reality rather than according to imagined threats. This demands courage because reason sometimes requires openness where fear recommends withdrawal. It sometimes requires truthfulness where fear encourages silence. It sometimes requires patience where fear urges immediate defense. Examine also the fears you carry about yourself. Many people secretly believe they are incapable of change. They accept old failures as permanent definitions of character. They mistake repeated habits for fixed destiny. Such beliefs deserve the same careful examination as every other fearful thought. Your past actions reveal what you have done. They do not determine what disciplined effort can accomplish beginning today. Fear often disguises laziness beneath the appearance of caution. It whispers that now is not the right time to begin. It recommends waiting until confidence appears naturally. It promises that future circumstances will somehow remove uncertainty, yet tomorrow brings the same invitation to postpone that exists today. A life directed by fear remains forever in preparation without entering action. Reason asks only whether the present duty is honorable. If it is, perform it despite emotional discomfort. Courage does not require the absence of fear. It requires refusing to let fear determine your conduct. This distinction changes everything. Instead of waiting for confidence, you begin acting according to principle. Confidence gradually follows disciplined action rather than preceding it. As evening arrives, review the fears that visited your mind throughout the day. Do not judge yourself harshly because they appeared. Judge instead whether they deserved belief. Which fears encouraged wise preparation? Which merely distracted you from present responsibilities? Which invited avoidance where virtue required action? Which disappeared once reason calmly examined them? This nightly examination sharpens discernment. Over time you begin recognizing familiar patterns. Certain fears repeat themselves because they arise from deeply rooted attachments. Perhaps you continue fearing loss because possessions occupy too large a place in your thinking. Perhaps criticism unsettles you because reputation has become more important than integrity. Perhaps uncertainty dominates your attention because control has become an unrealistic expectation. Honest reflection gradually uncovers these hidden dependencies. Once these attachments become visible, direct your effort toward strengthening what truly belongs to you. Your moral purpose deserves constant cultivation because it remains available under every circumstance. Another person's opinion cannot prevent you from speaking truthfully. Changing fortune cannot prevent you from acting justly. Uncertainty cannot prevent disciplined effort. Misfortune cannot prevent honorable conduct unless you willingly surrender your principles. As this understanding deepens, fear begins losing its ability to command immediate obedience. It still knocks upon the door of your mind, but it no longer enters without permission. You have established reason as the guardian standing at the entrance. Every fearful impression must now present its evidence before receiving belief. There will still be difficult days. Some fears will feel remarkably convincing. During such moments, return to simplicity. Slow your thinking. Refuse hurried conclusions. Ask what remains fully within your responsibility at this moment. Perform that duty with complete attention. Let the future arrive in its proper time instead of living within imagined versions of it. Never confuse constant worry with responsible living. Anxiety often pretends to be careful preparation, yet careful preparation ends once reasonable action has been taken. Worry continues long after action is no longer possible. One serves wisdom. The other consumes strength without producing benefit. Learn to recognize this difference with unwavering honesty. Your freedom does not depend upon removing every uncertainty from life. Such a task belongs to fantasy rather than philosophy. Your freedom depends upon refusing to believe every fearful story your mind produces before reason has completed its work. This discipline protects your character from becoming the servant of imagined futures. The world will continue offering uncertain circumstances because uncertainty belongs to the human condition. What changes is the quality of the mind that meets those circumstances. A disciplined mind no longer kneels before every frightening possibility. It examines patiently, judges fairly, and acts according to virtue rather than emotional urgency. Carry this practice into every part of your life. Let calm reasoning become stronger than anxious imagination. Let disciplined judgment become more trustworthy than immediate feeling. Every fearful thought that passes through honest examination strengthens your capacity for self-governance. Every refusal to believe an untested fear restores another portion of your inner freedom. In time you discover that courage is not created by favorable conditions. It is created by a mind that has learned to examine every fearful thought carefully before allowing it to shape the course of a single action. Number 6. Strengthen your character through daily disciplined choices and actions. Character is not revealed during rare moments of greatness. It is quietly formed through ordinary decisions that seem too small to matter. Every morning you rise, every word you choose, every promise you keep or abandon, every impulse you restrain, and every duty you either accept or avoid shapes the person you are becoming. The Stoic does not wait for extraordinary trials to prove inner strength. He understands that today's smallest choices are already constructing tomorrow's character. Many people speak often about becoming wiser, calmer, or stronger, yet they continue living according to habit rather than deliberate judgment. They admire discipline while repeatedly choosing comfort. They praise integrity while making excuses for small acts of dishonesty. They hope for peace while feeding the very habits that disturb their minds. This contradiction is not solved through better intentions, it is solved through better actions repeated consistently until they become the natural expression of reason. You must understand that your character does not develop accidentally. Every repeated choice leaves a mark upon the ruling part of your mind. Whenever you choose patience over irritation, your capacity for patience grows stronger. Whenever you surrender to resentment, resentment becomes easier the next time. The mind slowly becomes whatever it repeatedly practices. This is why discipline deserves your full attention. You are never simply making a choice. You are training yourself to become the kind of person who will make that same choice again. Many people wait until they feel motivated before acting according to their principles. This reverses the proper order. Feelings rise and fall according to countless influences beyond your command. If your conduct depends entirely upon emotional readiness, your character becomes unstable. The Stoic path asks something higher of you. Let reason decide what is right, then let action follow regardless of temporary comfort or discomfort. A disciplined life is built upon commitment rather than mood. Every day begins with an opportunity that many people overlook. Before the world begins placing demands upon your attention, you possess a brief period in which your own judgment can establish the direction of the day. Do not waste those first moments by immediately surrendering them to distraction. Sit quietly and remind yourself of the kind of person you intend to be before circumstances attempt to persuade you otherwise. Ask yourself simple questions that direct your character instead of your ambition. Will the first speak truthfully today, even when falsehood appears easier? Will the first remain just when others become unfair? Will the first complete necessary work without demanding perfect conditions? Will the first accept inconvenience without complaint? These questions prepare the soul for action because they focus attention upon conduct rather than outcomes. Throughout the day, you will encounter countless opportunities to abandon your principles in exchange for temporary relief. You will feel the temptation to avoid difficult conversations. You will notice the desire to exaggerate the truth for personal advantage. You may wish to postpone responsibilities because comfort appears more attractive than discipline. These moments deserve your greatest attention because they reveal whether philosophy has become a way of living or merely a pleasant idea. The undisciplined mind always searches for exceptions. It says this situation is different. It insists that one small compromise cannot possibly matter. It argues that tomorrow will provide a better opportunity to begin living according to reason. Yet tomorrow is built upon today's decisions. The person who repeatedly postpones discipline eventually discovers that delay itself has become a permanent habit. Do not underestimate the influence of repeated actions upon your inner life. Every unnecessary complaint strengthens dissatisfaction. Every careless word weakens self-command. Every promise broken to yourself makes the next promise easier to abandon. Character rarely collapses through one dramatic failure. It slowly erodes through countless small acts of negligence that appeared insignificant when they first occurred. The Stoic refuses to ignore these seemingly ordinary moments because he understands their hidden importance. Washing a room with care, arriving when promised, listening without interruption, completing unpleasant work without resentment, showing fairness when personal advantage would be easier. All these actions strengthen the same governing faculty that later faces greater trials. Excellence in major challenges grows naturally from discipline practiced in ordinary circumstances. One of the greatest mistakes people make is separating philosophy from daily life. They imagine wisdom belongs only to books, quiet reflection, or rare moments of inspiration. True Stoic practice refuses this division. Every interaction becomes training. Every inconvenience becomes instruction. Every responsibility becomes another opportunity to shape character through deliberate conduct. You may believe your greatest obstacle lies somewhere outside yourself. Perhaps you blame difficult colleagues, demanding schedules, financial uncertainty, or disappointing relationships. Yet look carefully. These conditions may challenge you, but they do not determine your character. What determines character is how you repeatedly choose to respond while living among such conditions. External circumstances provide occasions for virtue. They never remove your responsibility to practice it. Discipline also requires honesty about the stories you tell yourself. The mind possesses remarkable skill at protecting its own weaknesses. It calls avoidance caution. It calls laziness rest. It calls selfishness self-care. It calls resentment justice. Unless these hidden distortions are exposed, improvement remains impossible because you continue defending the very habits that require correction. Throughout the day, examine not only what you do but why you do it. Ask whether your choices arise from reason or from appetite. Are you speaking because truth requires speech or because pride demands recognition? Are you remaining silent because wisdom recommends restraint or because fear wishes to avoid discomfort? The outward action alone cannot reveal character. Its governing intention must also be examined. Another essential discipline is learning to finish what reason has already approved. Many people begin noble efforts with enthusiasm, yet abandon them as soon as enthusiasm fades. They mistake temporary excitement for lasting commitment. Character grows differently. It remains faithful even when emotional excitement disappears. It completes worthwhile duties because they are right, not because they continue feeling pleasant. There will be many occasions when your efforts seem unnoticed. Others may never recognize the patience you practiced, the temptation you resisted, or the quiet integrity you preserved. Do not allow this to weaken your resolve. Character was never meant to depend upon applause. The value of virtue lies within the action itself. The disciplined person acts honorably because honor deserves expression, not because recognition has been guaranteed. Guard yourself against measuring success by external achievements alone. Wealth may increase while character weakens. Reputation may improve while honesty quietly disappears. Influence may grow while self-command declines. These apparent successes become dangerous if they distract you from the true work taking place within. The Stoic measures progress differently. He asks whether reason governs more consistently today than yesterday. There is another practice that deserves daily attention. Deliberately choose one small act each day that strengthens discipline while offering no immediate reward. Rise promptly when comfort invites delay. Complete an unpleasant responsibility before turning toward enjoyable tasks. Speak kindly to someone who cannot advance your interests. Keep a commitment that nobody else would notice if you abandoned it. Such actions quietly train the soul to value virtue above convenience. This practice gradually transforms your relationship with discomfort. Many people fear inconvenience because they have spent years arranging life around immediate satisfaction. Their minds become fragile because every small difficulty appears excessive. The disciplined person welcomes ordinary challenges as opportunities to strengthen endurance. He no longer views discomfort as an enemy but as a teacher revealing where further growth remains necessary. You should also become attentive to the influence of repeated speech upon character. Words are not merely sounds passing through the air, they shape the habits of your own mind. A person who constantly complains trains himself to notice reasons for dissatisfaction. A person who frequently exaggerates slowly weakens his respect for truth. A person who repeatedly speaks with fairness strengthens justice within himself long before others notice any difference. As evening approaches, do not end the day without examining how you lived it. Sit quietly for a few moments and review your conduct with complete honesty. Ask where reason remained firm. Ask where impulse gained unnecessary influence. Ask where you honored your principles despite difficulty. Ask where convenience persuaded you to compromise. Do not search for excuses, search for understanding. Tomorrow's discipline depends upon today's truthful examination. This nightly reflection should never become an exercise in discouragement. The purpose is correction rather than condemnation. If you discover weakness, acknowledge it plainly. If you discover progress, accept it without pride. Both success and failure provide instruction when viewed through the eyes of reason. Neither deserves emotional exaggeration. Both deserve careful attention. You will gradually notice that disciplined actions begin changing your judgments before they change your circumstances. Patience becomes easier because it has been practiced repeatedly. Honest speech becomes more natural because deception has lost its appeal. Self-restraint becomes steadier because reason has been given frequent opportunities to govern. The transformation occurs quietly, almost unnoticed, until one day you respond wisely to a situation that would once have controlled you completely. Do not expect this growth to happen without resistance. Old habits will continue seeking authority. Comfort will continue presenting attractive arguments. Pride will continue resisting correction. Impatience will continue demanding immediate results. Each of these moments becomes another invitation to strengthen your character through deliberate action rather than automatic reaction. Remember that no single disciplined choice completes the work. Character resembles a field requiring continual care. Neglect allows disorder to return. Daily cultivation preserves order. This truth should encourage persistence rather than perfectionism. You are not asked to become flawless overnight. You are asked to remain faithful to the work entrusted to today. As this way of living deepens, your confidence begins resting upon something far more stable than success or praise. You trust your ability to choose honorably, regardless of changing conditions. This confidence cannot be shaken easily because it depends upon habits formed within your own control. Fortune may alter your possessions. Other people may alter their opinions. Circumstances may alter your plans. None of these can force you to abandon disciplined conduct unless you willingly surrender it. The world often celebrates dramatic achievements while overlooking quiet integrity. Resist that temptation within yourself. Lasting strength is not created by extraordinary moments alone. It is created by countless unseen decisions made faithfully when nobody is watching. Every honest action strengthens your moral purpose. Every disciplined response prepares you for greater responsibilities yet to come. Carry this understanding into tomorrow. Do not ask whether the day will be easy. Ask whether your conduct will remain worthy, regardless of what the day contains. Let each decision become another opportunity to shape your character according to reason rather than appetite. Let every completed duty remind you that inner excellence is never inherited, never purchased, and never granted by fortune. It is earned one disciplined choice at a time until your actions and your principles become so closely united that they can no longer be separated. That is the quiet strength the Stoic seeks, and it is built not in rare moments of greatness but in the faithful discipline of every ordinary day. Number 7. Refuse unnecessary complaints and preserve your inner peace always. Every complaint you repeat deserves careful examination before it leaves your lips. Most people believe complaining is harmless because it changes nothing outside themselves. They fail to notice what it changes within. Each unnecessary complaint strengthens the habit of resistance. It trains the mind to search for defects before duties, obstacles before opportunities for virtue, and excuses before responsibility. A person who constantly complains slowly becomes a stranger to inner peace because his attention has been educated to dwell upon everything he dislikes rather than everything he can govern. There is an important distinction that must never be ignored. Speaking honestly about a problem is not the same as complaining about it. Wisdom requires that real difficulties be recognized clearly so they can be met with reason. Complaining begins when speech no longer seeks understanding or useful action. It seeks emotional release through repeated dissatisfaction. It circles the same grievance without moving toward justice, correction, or acceptance. Such speech exhausts the soul because it asks the mind to relive the same disturbance again and again without producing any improvement. Listen carefully to your own conversations throughout the day. Notice how easily the mind invites you toward unnecessary dissatisfaction. The weather becomes an irritation. Traffic becomes an offense. Delays become personal insults. Another person's habits become endless subjects for criticism. Small inconveniences receive more attention than your own conduct. None of these complaints improves your character. Instead, they quietly teach your mind that peace depends upon favorable circumstances. This belief guarantees continual disappointment because circumstances never remain fully obedient to personal preference. The disciplined person understands that every complaint contains an unexamined judgment. Before dissatisfaction becomes speech, ask yourself what belief is hidden beneath it. Perhaps you believe every plan should unfold exactly as expected. Perhaps you assume other people must always behave according to your standards. Perhaps you imagine that comfort should accompany every ordinary day. Once these assumptions become visible, reason can begin examining whether they deserve continued loyalty. Many of the burdens people carry are not imposed by reality, but by the stories they continually repeat about reality. A difficult morning becomes proof that the entire day has been ruined. One unpleasant interaction becomes evidence that everyone is unreasonable. A temporary setback becomes an excuse for abandoning discipline altogether. Complaining enlarges ordinary events until they occupy far more space within the mind than they deserve. It grants lasting authority to passing inconveniences. The Stoic path asks you to become a careful guardian of your own attention. Every complaint competes with virtue for your focus. While your mind rehearses reasons for dissatisfaction, it cannot fully devote itself to justice, courage, self-command, or wisdom. The energy consumed by resentment is no longer available for honorable action. This is why complaining weakens more than your mood. It weakens your capacity to live according to reason. Begin each morning with a deliberate reminder that today's events are under no obligation to satisfy your preferences. Some plans will succeed while others will change without warning. Some people will behave thoughtfully while others will act carelessly. Some tasks will unfold easily, while others will demand greater endurance. Accept these possibilities before the day begins. A mind prepared for ordinary difficulty is less likely to waste itself resisting what belongs naturally to human life. As the hours pass, pay close attention to your first impulse whenever inconvenience appears. You may notice a quiet invitation to complain forming almost immediately. Resist the urge to follow it automatically. Instead, pause and ask whether speaking these words will improve your judgment or merely strengthen dissatisfaction. If your speech cannot contribute to wiser action, silence often protects the mind more effectively than repeated expression. This discipline should never be mistaken for emotional suppression. The Stoic does not pretend difficulties are pleasant when they are not. He simply refuses to multiply discomfort through unnecessary commentary. He recognizes that hardship already demands enough attention without adding layers of emotional resistance through habitual complaint. Honest observation remains useful. Endless dissatisfaction does not. Consider how often your inner peace has been surrendered over matters too small to deserve such authority. A delayed response, a misplaced object, an unexpected interruption, a brief misunderstanding. These events enter your life for only a short time, yet complaints allow them to remain far longer than reality intended. What lasted minutes becomes a burden carried throughout the day because the mind continues feeding it long after the event has ended. The disciplined person quietly asks another question: is this worthy of disturbing my character? Most situations fail this examination immediately. They may deserve practical attention, but they do not deserve control over your inner life. Once this distinction becomes clear, many frustrations lose their influence before they have an opportunity to grow. Another hidden danger of complaining lies in its effect upon relationships. Constant dissatisfaction teaches others to associate your presence with discouragement rather than steadiness. More importantly, it shapes your own perception of them. The more frequently you speak about another person's faults, the more difficult it becomes to recognize their humanity with fairness. Complaints gradually replace understanding with irritation because repeated speech reinforces repeated judgment. Justice requires a different habit. Before criticizing another person's conduct, examine your own response with equal honesty. Their impatience does not justify yours. Their carelessness does not excuse neglect within your own character. Another person's shortcomings remain their responsibility. Your conduct remains yours. This distinction protects the mind from becoming preoccupied with correcting others while neglecting itself. You should also notice how complaining often disguises a deeper refusal to accept the limits of your own control. The mind quietly insists that reality ought to arrange itself according to personal wishes. When reality refuses, dissatisfaction appears. Yet peace cannot coexist with constant demands placed upon things beyond your authority. Every unnecessary complaint reveals another place where expectation has exceeded reason. Practice replacing complaint with deliberate inquiry. Whenever frustration begins rising, ask what honorable action remains available. Perhaps the answer is patience. Perhaps it is careful communication. Perhaps it is diligent work despite inconvenience. Perhaps no external action is possible at all, leaving only the opportunity to preserve inner composure. Whatever the answer, directing attention toward virtue immediately weakens the attraction of complaint. This practice gradually changes the quality of your speech. Conversations become less occupied with grievances and more concerned with responsibility. Words begin serving truth rather than emotional agitation. Others may still complain around you, but you no longer feel compelled to join them. You understand that another person's dissatisfaction need not become your own. There is another form of complaint that often remains hidden because it is spoken only within the mind. Outward silence alone does not preserve peace if inward conversation continues repeating resentment without end. Many people never voice their dissatisfaction publicly, yet they rehearse it privately for hours. The Stoic discipline reaches this hidden place as well. Observe your internal dialogue with the same care you give your spoken words. Ask whether your thoughts are cultivating wisdom or merely extending emotional disturbance. Throughout the day, train yourself to distinguish between what deserves correction and what deserves acceptance. If something can be improved through reasonable action, then act without bitterness. If no useful action remains possible, then release the desire to struggle against reality. Complaining often exists precisely because the mind refuses either of these paths. It neither accepts nor acts. It simply repeats dissatisfaction until peace disappears. As evening approaches, examine not only what happened, but how often you surrendered your tranquility through unnecessary resistance. Review the moments when complaint almost escaped your lips. Ask what hidden expectation gave it strength. Notice where silence protected your judgment and where dissatisfaction gained unnecessary influence. Such reflection gradually reveals patterns invisible during the rush of ordinary activity. Do not become discouraged if you discover how deeply rooted the habit has become. Complaining often develops through years of unexamined repetition. Every interruption, every inconvenience, every disappointment becomes another opportunity to reinforce it. Yet the same process that created the habit can also transform it. Each moment you choose thoughtful restraint over automatic dissatisfaction weakens its authority. You will eventually discover that refusing unnecessary complaints does not make life empty or passive. It creates space for greater attention to what truly deserves your energy. Instead of endlessly rehearsing inconveniences, you become more available for acts of justice. Instead of strengthening resentment, you strengthen patience. Instead of magnifying obstacles, you quietly develop endurance. The mind begins serving virtue rather than irritation. Do not confuse calmness with indifference. The disciplined person remains deeply engaged with life. He works diligently, corrects genuine problems where possible, and speaks honestly when justice requires it. The difference lies in the spirit with which these actions are performed. They arise from reason rather than emotional resistance. They seek improvement rather than self-indulgent dissatisfaction. You may notice that preserving inner peace requires continual vigilance, because complaints rarely announce themselves openly. They often disguise themselves as ordinary conversation, harmless humor, or understandable frustration. Examine each carefully. Ask whether your words strengthen character or merely entertain discouragement. The answer quietly determines the condition of your own mind far more than the condition of the world around you. Another important discipline is learning to appreciate ordinary moments without demanding extraordinary circumstances. Many complaints arise because people overlook what remains present while focusing entirely upon what is absent. They ignore opportunities already within reach because attention has become fixed upon unmet desires. Reason restores proper proportion by directing gratitude toward present duties and present capacities instead of endless comparison with imagined alternatives. Peace grows stronger when you stop measuring every hour against an ideal version of reality that never truly existed. Life will continue presenting inconvenience because inconvenience belongs to human existence. It will continue presenting imperfect people because you yourself remain imperfect. It will continue presenting uncertainty because certainty was never promised. Once these truths become fully accepted, unnecessary complaints lose the foundation upon which they once depended. Carry this discipline into every conversation tomorrow. Before speaking, ask whether your words preserve clarity or spread dissatisfaction. Before reacting, ask whether the event truly deserves authority over your peace. Before repeating a grievance, ask whether repetition will strengthen virtue or merely deepen habit. Let reason answer before emotion speaks. Your tranquility does not depend upon eliminating every difficulty from life. It depends upon refusing to cooperate with habits that transform ordinary difficulties into lasting disturbances. Every complaint you decline to nourish protects the ruling part of your mind. Every moment of deliberate restraint strengthens your ability to remain governed by reason rather than circumstance. In time, you will discover that inner peace is not a reward granted after the world becomes easier. It is the natural result of a disciplined soul that no longer wastes its strength arguing with every inconvenience. Such a person walks through the same uncertain world as everyone else, yet carries a quieter mind because he has learned that his greatest responsibility is not controlling events, but governing the judgments and words that arise in response to them. That quiet mastery is worth more than 1,000 favorable circumstances because it remains available wherever reason is faithfully practiced. Number 8. Choose virtue above comfort during every difficult moment you face. Every difficult moment places two paths before you, though the mind rarely notices both. One path promises immediate comfort, the other demands virtue. Comfort invites you to avoid, excuse, delay, exaggerate, surrender, or protect your pride. Virtue asks you to remain truthful, disciplined, just, and courageous, even when every impulse urges you toward the easier road. The quality of your life is decided not by how often hardship appears, but by which of these paths you repeatedly choose when hardship stands directly before you. Many people spend years believing they seek happiness while they are actually pursuing comfort. These two pursuits are not the same. Comfort asks only that unpleasant feelings disappear as quickly as possible. Virtue asks whether your character remains honorable regardless of those feelings. Comfort teaches dependence upon favorable conditions. Virtue teaches freedom within every condition. One weakens the soul through constant accommodation. The other strengthens it through faithful practice. Look honestly at your own decisions. How often have you remained silent because speaking truth seemed uncomfortable? How often have you postponed necessary work because temporary ease appeared more attractive? How often have you defended your pride instead of admitting a mistake? In each of these moments, discomfort itself was never your greatest obstacle. The greater obstacle was believing that comfort deserved greater loyalty than your own character. The Stoic does not measure actions by how pleasant they feel. He measures them by whether they agree with reason. This changes everything. A difficult conversation becomes valuable if justice requires it. A demanding responsibility becomes worthwhile if duty calls for it. An inconvenient sacrifice becomes meaningful if integrity depends upon it. Discomfort loses much of its power once pleasure is no longer accepted as the highest good. The undisciplined mind constantly negotiates with virtue. It asks whether honesty can be postponed. It searches for exceptions to fairness. It seeks permission to abandon discipline because circumstances have become difficult. Every compromise appears small when viewed alone. Yet repeated compromises quietly reshape the character until comfort becomes the hidden ruler of every decision. Such a life may appear peaceful on the surface, yet inwardly it remains fragile because it depends upon avoiding difficulty rather than learning to endure it. Begin each morning by reminding yourself that today will present opportunities to exchange virtue for convenience. Expect these moments. Do not imagine they arrive only during great crises. They appear in ordinary conversations, routine responsibilities, unexpected frustrations, and private choices that no one else will witness. These unnoticed moments possess enormous importance because they quietly determine the kind of person you are becoming. Ask yourself before the day begins, what principle deserves your protection above all else? Is it honesty? Is it justice? Is it patience? Is it self-command? Whatever answer reason provides, resolve that no temporary discomfort will persuade you to abandon it. Such preparation strengthens the mind before temptation arrives. It establishes loyalty to virtue before appetite begins offering attractive alternatives. As the day unfolds, you will repeatedly encounter the voice of comfort. It rarely speaks openly. Instead, it disguises itself as reasonable advice. It says that one small lie will avoid unnecessary conflict. It suggests that one broken promise will not matter. It argues that another person's unfairness justifies your own. It encourages delay because there will always be more favorable conditions tomorrow. Unless these suggestions are carefully examined, they quietly become the foundation of your conduct. Reason asks different questions. It asks whether ease deserves greater respect than integrity. It asks whether avoiding discomfort improves your character or merely postpones necessary discipline. It asks whether immediate relief is worth the long habit of weakening your own moral purpose. These questions reveal that many choices appearing harmless in the moment carry lasting consequences within the soul. You should never confuse suffering with virtue. The Stoic does not seek hardship for its own sake. Difficulty possesses value only because it provides an opportunity to express wisdom, courage, justice, and self-restraint. Pain alone teaches nothing. It becomes meaningful only when reason transforms it into disciplined action. Therefore, do not admire discomfort itself. Admire the character that remains upright while passing through it. Consider the person who receives harsh criticism. Comfort urges immediate retaliation or silent resentment. Virtue asks for something entirely different. It asks whether any truth exists within the criticism. It asks whether patience deserves expression before wounded pride. It asks whether another person's behavior should determine the condition of your own character. These questions do not remove discomfort. They transform it into an occasion for moral growth. The same principle applies to failure. Comfort wishes to escape responsibility by blaming circumstances or abandoning effort altogether. Virtue asks you to examine your actions honestly, correct what can be corrected, and continue working without bitterness. Failure becomes destructive only when pride refuses instruction. Otherwise, it becomes another teacher serving the development of wisdom. One of the greatest illusions is believing that repeated comfort produces lasting peace. In reality, a life organized entirely around avoiding difficulty gradually becomes ruled by fear. Every challenge appears threatening because endurance has never been strengthened. Every inconvenience feels excessive because patience has remained untrained. Every uncertainty creates anxiety because the mind has learned to depend upon favorable conditions instead of disciplined judgment. This is why deliberate practice matters. Throughout your day, choose small opportunities to strengthen your willingness to place virtue above ease. Complete difficult tasks before enjoyable ones. Admit mistakes without waiting to be discovered. Keep promises even when honoring them becomes inconvenient. Listen patiently when irritation urges interruption. Speak fairly about people who are absent. These actions may appear ordinary, yet each one quietly strengthens the ruling part of your mind. Pay careful attention to the excuses your thoughts produce whenever discipline becomes uncomfortable. The mind possesses endless creativity when protecting its own weakness. It insists that today is unusually difficult. It claims that your situation deserves special treatment. It promises greater commitment once conditions improve. Such reasoning should never be accepted without examination. Most excuses merely disguise attachment to comfort beneath respectable language. Another important practice is learning to distinguish physical discomfort from moral harm. Fatigue, inconvenience, criticism, uncertainty, and temporary disappointment may create unpleasant feelings, but they do not corrupt character. Dishonesty, injustice, cowardice, and uncontrolled desire do. The wise person, therefore, fears moral failure far more than ordinary discomfort. He understands that external hardships pass, while habits of poor judgment become deeply rooted through repetition. Notice how often your strongest temptations appear during difficult moments. This is no accident. When the mind becomes uncomfortable, it naturally searches for immediate relief. Sometimes relief comes through anger, because anger briefly creates the illusion of strength. Sometimes it appears through avoidance, because postponement temporarily removes pressure. Sometimes it arrives through blame, because blaming others protects pride from self-examination. Yet none of these responses strengthens character. They merely postpone the discipline that reason already requires. Whenever you feel the desire to escape discomfort, pause before acting. Ask yourself which part of you is making the decision. Is reason speaking, or is appetite demanding satisfaction? Is your commitment to virtue directing this choice, or is your attachment to ease quietly taking control? Honest answers to these questions often reveal motives that remained hidden beneath automatic behavior. Your relationships also become stronger when virtue receives greater loyalty than comfort. It is often easier to avoid difficult conversations than to speak with honesty and kindness. It is easier to protect pride than to ask forgiveness. It is easier to criticize than to understand. Yet every relationship gradually reflects the quality of the character carried into it. Comfort preserves appearances. Virtue builds trust. Do not expect others to appreciate your discipline immediately. Some may misunderstand your restraint. Others may question your refusal to compromise. A few may even mock your commitment to principle because it exposes their own unwillingness to live by similar standards. None of this should alter your course. The value of virtue has never depended upon public approval. Its worth remains complete even when witnessed by no one except your own conscience. As evening approaches, examine the moments when comfort attempted to redirect your choices. Do not ask whether the day felt pleasant. Ask whether your actions remained faithful to reason. Where did convenience persuade you away from your principles? Where did courage quietly prevail despite uncertainty? Where did discipline overcome immediate desire? These questions reveal genuine progress far more accurately than external success. Treat every answer with honesty rather than emotion. If you discover weakness, correct it tomorrow without self-pity. If you discover strength, continue practicing without pride. Character grows through consistency rather than dramatic achievement. Every faithful decision prepares the soul for greater responsibilities that have not yet arrived. You will eventually notice that discomfort itself begins losing its authority. not because difficult situations disappear, but because your values have become properly ordered. What once seemed unbearable now appears manageable because virtue has become more precious than ease. The mind no longer asks first how to avoid hardship, it asks how to remain honorable while meeting it. There will always be circumstances capable of removing comfort. Health may change, wealth may disappear, plans may collapse, relationships may end. None of these events possesses the power to remove virtue unless you willingly surrender it. This understanding creates a stability impossible to obtain through external success alone. The person whose highest good depends upon changing circumstances lives in continual insecurity. The person whose highest good rests within disciplined character carries lasting freedom wherever life leads. Every difficult moment, therefore, becomes more than an obstacle. It becomes a question directed toward your soul. What matters most to you now? Immediate relief or lasting integrity, temporary satisfaction or enduring self-respect, comfortable compromise or faithful reason? You answer this question not through words but through action. Carry this awareness into tomorrow. Expect discomfort without resentment because difficulty belongs to human life. Welcome every challenge as another opportunity to strengthen what cannot be taken from you unless you freely abandon it. Let your first concern always be the condition of your own character rather than the condition of your surroundings. When comfort and virtue stand before you offering different paths, choose the one that leaves your conscience clear, your reason unbroken, and your moral purpose stronger than it was the day before. In that decision lies the quiet strength of the Stoic life, a strength built not upon escaping hardship, but upon meeting every hardship with unwavering fidelity to virtue. Number 9. Train your mind before life tests your calm and courage. Life does not announce the day it will examine your character. It does not send notice before disappointment arrives. It does not ask whether you feel prepared before placing difficulty in your path. The test often comes without warning through illness, criticism, failure, loss, uncertainty, or betrayal. In that moment, you do not suddenly become wise because you wish to be. You respond according to the condition in which you have trained your mind long before the challenge appeared. This is why preparation belongs at the center of the Stoic life. A calm mind is not created during the storm. It is cultivated during ordinary days when nothing appears urgent. Many people live as though discipline can always be postponed until tomorrow. They assume there will be time to strengthen judgment after comfort has already weakened it for years. They believe courage will naturally appear when fear becomes overwhelming. They imagine patience will somehow emerge after a lifetime of impatience. Yet the mind follows the habits it has repeatedly practiced. It cannot be expected to produce wisdom under pressure if it has spent every peaceful day surrendering itself to distraction and impulse. Look honestly at your own life. Consider how quickly your thoughts move when something unexpected happens. Does your mind immediately seek understanding, or does it rush toward panic? Does it examine the situation carefully, or does it begin constructing the worst possible future? Does it remain governed by reason, or does it become the servant of emotion? These reactions rarely begin in the moment of crisis. They reveal patterns established through countless ordinary days that seemed too insignificant to deserve careful attention. The Stoic understands that every peaceful day is preparation for a more demanding one. This understanding changes the purpose of daily life. Ordinary mornings are no longer empty routines. They become opportunities to strengthen the ruling faculty before circumstances attempt to weaken it. Quiet moments become training rather than idle comfort. Small frustrations become exercises rather than inconveniences. Every hour offers another chance to develop the habits that will later protect your character. Begin your morning before the demands of the world scatter your attention. Sit in silence for a few moments and prepare your judgment. Remind yourself that today may contain praise or criticism, success or disappointment, cooperation or conflict. None of these possibilities can determine the quality of your character unless you allow them to govern your thinking. Decide before the day begins that your first loyalty belongs to reason rather than emotional reaction. Do not prepare by imagining perfect outcomes. Prepare by strengthening your willingness to respond honorably regardless of outcomes. This distinction changes the entire direction of your thinking. Instead of asking how to prevent every difficulty, ask how to remain just if difficulty arrives. Instead of hoping never to encounter disrespect, prepare to answer disrespect with self-command. Instead of demanding certainty, practice steadiness within uncertainty. Such preparation removes dependence upon favorable circumstances and places confidence where it truly belongs. Throughout the day, treat every interruption as a lesson rather than an accident. A delayed appointment can strengthen patience. An unfair remark can strengthen restraint. A demanding responsibility can strengthen perseverance. An unexpected change of plans can strengthen flexibility guided by reason. The undisciplined mind sees only inconvenience. The disciplined mind recognizes opportunities for practice that would otherwise remain hidden. One of the greatest errors is believing that training occurs only during dramatic moments. Character develops through repetition, not spectacle. Every time you resist the urge to speak carelessly, you strengthen self-command. Every time you complete a duty without demanding comfort first, you strengthen endurance. Every time you pause before accepting an emotional impression as truth, you strengthen judgment. These quiet victories often pass unnoticed by others, yet they are constructing the person you will become when greater trials eventually appear. Observe how athletes prepare long before competition begins. They do not wait until the contest starts before learning the necessary skills. The Stoic approaches the inner life with the same seriousness. Daily reflection, disciplined attention, and careful examination of judgments are not optional activities reserved for peaceful seasons. They are essential preparations for moments when clear thinking becomes most difficult. Many people spend hours preparing their appearance, careers, or finances while neglecting the condition of their own minds. They organize their surroundings carefully, yet leave their judgments unexamined. They protect possessions with great attention while allowing impatience, pride, fear, and resentment to enter their thoughts without resistance. This imbalance creates fragile lives because external preparation cannot compensate for internal disorder. The ruling part of your mind deserves greater care than anything you own. Every decision passes through it. Every relationship is shaped by it. Every response to hardship depends upon it. If this inner faculty remains neglected, no amount of external success will provide lasting stability. Therefore, make the education of your judgment one of your highest daily responsibilities. Another valuable practice is anticipating ordinary challenges without becoming anxious about them. Quietly remind yourself that some people will misunderstand your intentions. Others may behave unfairly. Plans may require adjustment. Your body may grow tired. Your efforts may not receive immediate recognition. Such reflection is not pessimism, it is preparation. It prevents surprise from becoming unnecessary suffering because the mind has already accepted that human life naturally includes these experiences. When difficulty finally appears, remember that your first responsibility is not changing the event itself. Your first responsibility is governing your response. Before speaking, allow reason to examine the impression. Before reacting, ask whether your judgment remains accurate. Before blaming circumstances, ask what belongs entirely within your own responsibility. This pause protects the mind from becoming the servant of immediate emotion. Many people believe courage means never feeling fear. The Stoic understands otherwise. Fear may appear without invitation because impressions arise naturally. Courage begins when fear no longer dictates conduct. A trained mind notices fear without surrendering judgment. It allows reason to determine action even while discomfort remains present. This capacity cannot be invented during crisis. It grows through countless moments of faithful practice beforehand. The same principle applies to calmness. Calm is not the absence of disturbance around you. Calm is the ability to preserve the authority of reason while disturbance exists. External noise cannot destroy inner order unless your own judgments cooperate with it. Therefore, stop waiting for perfect conditions before practicing composure. Practice amid ordinary frustrations, so greater difficulties find a mind already familiar with self-command. Pay close attention to your habits, because habits become your invisible teachers. If you repeatedly rush through each day without reflection, haste becomes your natural response. If you continually seek distraction whenever discomfort appears, avoidance becomes your automatic solution. If you constantly blame circumstances, responsibility weakens. Every repeated action educates the soul whether you intend it or not. Choose habits that strengthen rather than weaken your ruling faculty. Read carefully instead of consuming endless distraction. Reflect before sleeping instead of ending each day without examination. Speak deliberately instead of impulsively. Perform necessary work promptly instead of negotiating endlessly with reluctance. Each habit quietly prepares the mind for challenges still hidden in the future. Another discipline deserves equal attention. Practice reducing dependence upon comfort before necessity forces the lesson upon you. Occasionally choose simplicity when luxury is available. Accept minor inconvenience without complaint. Complete difficult tasks without rewarding yourself first. These small acts remind the mind that contentment does not require constant ease. They prepare you to remain steady if circumstances one day remove comforts you previously considered essential. You should also train yourself to distinguish facts from interpretations. A difficult event occurs. That is the fact. The conclusion that your life has been ruined is an interpretation. A person disagrees with you. That is the fact. The belief that your worth has diminished is an interpretation. By practicing this distinction daily, you weaken the habit of allowing emotional conclusions to disguise themselves as reality. Every evening, return to yourself before sleep. Review the day carefully. Ask where reason remained strong. Ask where emotion gained unnecessary authority. Ask where you acted according to principle despite discomfort. Ask where habit quietly replaced thoughtful judgment. Such reflection is not punishment, it is maintenance. Just as neglected tools become dull, neglected judgment gradually loses its sharpness. Do not search for perfection during these reflections. Search for truth. Honest recognition of weakness is already an act of strength because it creates the possibility of correction. Self-deception, by contrast, preserves every fault exactly as it is. The disciplined person therefore welcomes accurate self-knowledge even when it reveals uncomfortable realities. As your practice continues, you will notice that challenges begin affecting you differently. Situations that once created immediate panic now receive thoughtful examination. Criticism that once wounded your pride now invites careful reflection. Delays that once produced frustration become opportunities to exercise patience. This transformation does not happen because life has become easier. It happens because your mind has become better prepared. Remember that every test contains two parts. The external event stands beyond complete control. Your response belongs to you. If you spend peaceful days strengthening this second part, you need not fear the uncertainty of the first. Fortune may arrange circumstances however it chooses. Your responsibility remains constant. Govern your own judgment with wisdom. Direct your own choices with justice. Restrain your own impulses with discipline. Never assume that one season of discipline guarantees lifelong stability. The work of training the mind continues every day because neglect begins quietly. Pride whispers that further practice is unnecessary. Comfort suggests that vigilance can rest for a while. Distraction promises harmless escape. Resist these invitations with the same seriousness you would resist obvious danger, because gradual decline often enters disguised as harmless relaxation. There will come a day when life asks something difficult of you. It may require patience beyond what you believed possible. It may demand honesty when falsehood appears profitable. It may call for courage while fear speaks loudly. In that moment, you will not need to search desperately for strength if you have already been cultivating it faithfully. Your habits will answer before panic has time to rule. Carry this understanding into every ordinary day. Do not wait for hardship before preparing your character. Let each sunrise become another opportunity to strengthen judgment. Let each inconvenience become another lesson in self-command. Let each evening become another occasion for honest examination. When life finally places your calm and courage on trial, you will discover that the outcome was being shaped long before the test ever arrived. The disciplined mind does not rely upon chance when difficulty appears. It relies upon the quiet work that has been faithfully practiced day after day, until reason has become stronger than impulse and virtue has become stronger than fear. Number 10. Govern yourself completely, and nothing outside can rule you. If you allow the outside world to govern your inner life, you will never know peace. Every shifting opinion, every unexpected event, every harsh word, every delay, every loss, and every gain will pull your mind in a different direction. You will become reactive rather than deliberate, shaped by circumstances instead of reason. A life like this does not belong to you. It belongs to whatever happens around you. Self-governance is not a luxury. It is the foundation of human freedom. Without it, you remain dependent on conditions you cannot control. With it, nothing external can command your inner state unless you first surrender authority from within. This is the dividing line between a mind that is owned by impressions and a mind that observes them without submission. Examine how often your attention is taken hostage throughout a single day. A notification changes your focus. A comment alters your mood. A memory disturbs your calm. An expectation reshapes your emotions. None of these things has true authority over your judgment, yet they appear to rule you because your attention responds before reason is engaged. This automatic surrender is not fate, it is habit. You must begin to see impressions for what they are. They are not commands, they are not truths, they are not final judgments, they are simply appearances entering the mind. Between the appearance and your response lies your ruling faculty. That is the space where freedom either survives or is lost. If you do not train this space, it will be occupied by impulse. Most suffering is not created by events themselves, but by the judgments attached to them. An event occurs. The mind immediately labels it as good or bad, loss or gain, success or failure, insult or praise. These labels are often accepted without scrutiny, yet they are not reality. They are interpretations formed under the influence of desire, fear, and habit. If you do not govern these interpretations, you are governed by them. To govern yourself completely begins with reclaiming your judgments. Before accepting any impression, pause long enough to ask whether it is shaped by reason or reaction. Is this conclusion necessary, or is it emotional? Is this interpretation accurate, or is it exaggerated? Is this belief aligned with what is within my control, or does it depend on things outside my authority? These questions return power to the mind that had been surrendered through automatic response. You must also learn the distinction between what belongs to you and what does not. Your judgments, your choices, your intentions, and your actions belong to you. Everything else does not. Reputation, outcomes, other people's behavior, material possessions, and external events lie beyond your command. When you confuse these categories, you attempt to control what cannot be controlled and neglect what can be governed. This confusion is the root of inner instability. Consider how much energy is wasted trying to direct things outside your authority. You worry about how others perceive you. You try to influence outcomes that depend on countless variables. You replay conversations hoping they had gone differently. You anticipate future scenarios as if imagining them could shape them. None of this increases control. It only weakens attention to what is actually within your power. Self-governance requires withdrawal of authority from these external attachments. Not withdrawal from life, but withdrawal of dependence. You still act, still engage, still participate fully in the world, but without handing your peace over to outcomes that do not belong to you. This difference creates a stable center that external events cannot easily disturb. Begin each morning by establishing this center deliberately. Before engaging with the world, remind yourself that the day will present impressions that attempt to seize your attention. Some will be pleasant, others unpleasant. Some will align with your plans, others will disrupt them. None of them requires immediate emotional surrender. You are not required to agree with every impression you encounter. This morning discipline prepares the mind to remain watchful. It creates awareness that prevents automatic reaction from becoming default behavior. Without this preparation, the day begins as a series of unexamined responses. With it, the day begins under the guidance of reason. Throughout the day, practice observing your reactions before acting on them. When irritation appears, do not immediately express it. When praise arrives, do not immediately depend on it. When fear arises, do not immediately obey it. When desire appears, do not immediately pursue it. Each impulse must first pass through the examination of reason. This brief delay is where self-governance is exercised. You will notice that most impulses lose strength once they are observed clearly. They thrive on immediacy. They depend on unexamined acceptance. Once brought into awareness, they are revealed as temporary movements rather than commands. A mind that observes clearly is no longer easily controlled by them. Another essential practice is returning repeatedly to what is within your control. Whenever your attention drifts toward external concerns, bring it back. What is under my authority right now? What choice is mine to make in this moment? What action aligns with reason regardless of outcome? This repeated redirection trains attention away from external dependency and toward internal responsibility. Many people misunderstand control as domination over external reality. This misunderstanding creates constant frustration. The Stoic understanding is different. Control belongs only to the inner faculty that chooses how to respond. Once this is understood, the goal is no longer to reshape the world according to desire, but to align your actions with reason regardless of how the world unfolds. This shift removes a great burden from the mind. You are no longer required to force outcomes into compliance with preference. You are required only to act rightly. The weight of controlling everything disappears. What remains is the clarity of responsible action. Evening reflection is essential for strengthening this discipline. Review the moments where you surrendered authority to external impressions. Where did you react without examination? Where did you allow emotion to speak before reason? Where did you confuse interpretation with fact? Where did you give importance to what lies beyond your control? This reflection is not for self-punishment. It is for recognition and correction. As this practice continues, you will begin noticing subtle changes in perception. External events will still occur, but their power over your inner life will weaken. Praise will feel less binding. Criticism will feel less destabilizing. Success will feel less intoxicating. failure will feel less devastating. The reason is simple. Your sense of self is no longer anchored in what lies outside your control. Instead, it is anchored in your ability to choose wisely. This choice remains available in every situation. No external force can remove it unless you surrender it willingly. This is the deepest form of independence, not isolation from the world, but immunity from being governed by it. There will still be moments when old habits attempt to return. A sudden event will provoke immediate reaction. A strong emotion will try to bypass reason. A familiar fear will attempt to regain authority. In these moments, do not be discouraged. Simply return again to the discipline of observation. Notice the impression, question its validity, and choose your response deliberately rather than automatically. Over time, this repeated return builds a stable inner structure. The mind becomes less reactive and more deliberate. Impulses lose their authority to command behavior instantly. Reason regains its rightful position as guide rather than observer of uncontrolled reactions. You will also discover that external events begin to lose their ability to define your day. What once felt like a ruined morning becomes a manageable inconvenience. What once felt like praise that defined your worth becomes a passing opinion. What once felt like rejection becomes simply another external event without moral weight. This transformation is not because life has changed, but because your relationship to impressions has changed. To govern yourself completely is to live without being ruled by what you do not control. It is to act in the world while remaining inwardly free from its fluctuations. It is to meet every event with the same disciplined question: what response is within my authority and consistent with reason? If you continue this practice, you will gradually recognize a simple truth. Nothing outside you has the power to command your inner life unless you first surrender that power through unexamined judgment. Once this is understood deeply, freedom is no longer something granted by circumstance. It becomes the natural state of a mind that governs itself with reason, regardless of whatever the external world may bring.